You know, there's a lot of Verge going around. We've got On the Verge, we've got 90 Seconds on the Verge, we've got Verge favorites, and now we got Verge apps. There's just so much Verge. We can't even hold it in. And so we're bringing even more Verge. Get ready. Stay tuned for the Verge Mobile Show. Hi, I'm Dieter Bone.
I'm Chris Sigler.
I'm Vlad Savov.
And welcome. It's the Verge Mobile Show.
I tried to figure it, I assumed Vlad would be very jaunty and I'm Vlad Savov. But I can't quite relax and look that
That's not
confident
bad.
in myself.
That wasn't
That's
bad
not
at all,
bad.
actually.
That's a pretty good Vlad Savov. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll allow it.
I am in fact Nilay Patel, but I will be playing the role of Vlad Savov for the rest of today.
Who is still in Bulgaria, flexing his muscles and jumping into pools and being
Having
otherwise.
an amazing time. Apparently. It looks like he's having just an incredible time doing whatever it is that he's doing out there.
He's mostly being shirtless, as far as I can tell. He's
Right.
he's examining his body and his relationship to the world around that body. And
He's
clothes are in the
exploring
way. Yes.
that time in every young Bulgarian's life where he explores his body.
Well, what I think is interesting is that usually if you work with Vlad, if you've had the privilege and the pleasure of working with Vlad for so many years, you know that he can't help but show you his muscles from time to time. He's just every now and again, he's just he responds to an email thread with a picture of a bicep. But because he's on vacation.
They're scary, right? They're impressive muscles. I live in continual fear that Vlad is going to beat me up.
Yeah, no, I've seen Vlad crack a walnut in his bicep before. I wish I had seen that. That would be amazing. No, but I think he's been on vacation now for so long that he hasn't had the ability to electronically send a picture of a muscle to anyone. So he's just doing it on Twitter instead, which I don't know if I should stop it or if I should subtly encourage it.
Right.
I think I vote subtly encourage. Although, why be subtle? I mean, honestly.
All right.
I mean, you realize where this is heading. It's just a matter of time before Vlad shows up on the mobile show without his shirt, and I'm not looking forward to that week. But anyway, we should get into it. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about.
It is the 8th episode of the Verge Mobile Show. It is the week of July 16th, I should mention. And as I said earlier, the most important thing that has happened in all of mobility is The Verge now has apps on both iOS and Android. And I think they're quite good. I'm really happy. Commenting on it is great. Reading through comments, I actually enjoy it almost as much as doing it on the site. On the site, you can hit Z to go through new comments, but there's just a big next comment button, which is pretty cool. And speaking of comments, there's 500 comments on that post already.
Yeah.
I think
but
that
install them. They're awesome.
I think that from the day The Verge launched, mobile apps were probably the #1 requested feature, wouldn't you guys say?
Oh yeah, without question. And they've been in development for a really long time. And they came out really well, but like the site itself, they're not done by any stretch of the imagination. We have a lot of ideas for these apps.
Now, you personally coded these, right, Nilay?
Yes, I've been in my basement with just an emulator and me. I have a big second screen. No, I have no idea who did these. I think.
And one thing that I believe that I hold very dear to my heart is my belief that these apps are the next Instagram. I think it's just a matter of time.
There are.
Which of us is going to hate on it? Which of us is going to love it?
Yeah,
it's true. Well, it's just a matter of time before the Verge is acquired.
Were developed with us in conjunction with the Willow Tree apps. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I was joking that I don't know who did them. They're great. You should look at them, and they're free. For God's sake, man, get a free app on your phone. You probably already have dozens of them, right?
It's you have a 32 or 64 gig iPhone. I mean, come on. What else are you doing with that space?
Exactly.
Load it up.
Pictures of your family. It's lame.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You've seen your parents before. Delete a few photos.
Put on the Verge app.
Wow. I have nothing else to say about these apps other than you must install them right now. Mm-hmm. But I do want to talk about, we've had iPhone rumors. It's been actually kind of a quiet couple of weeks, but now they're starting to come out again. And so the first one is a topic near and dear to Chris's heart. I know that he loves nothing better than talking about nano-SIMs. It is his favorite thing.
If I believe that I could make a living as a full-time nano-SIM editor,
Dude, nano-SIM Digest with Chris Sigler.
nano-SIM Digest. There's no question
read that.
yes, and in my spare time, Nilay and I would be working on our appliance blog that we've been planning for years. No,
that leaves no time for your Fast and Furious podcast.
Oh, that's right. Cray and I are working on this fast cast.
Oh my God,
that we have in the works.
Dude, the other day in our let me tell the listeners a story. The other day in our chat, our work chat, our IRC, I don't remember what it was. There's a picture of somebody, like a woman driving a car, and Chris just drops, "She's the next Letty." And there was just this dead silence of nobody getting his Fast and Furious reference. And I got it. And I didn't want to like ruin it. I didn't want to ruin this moment, this crushing moment for Chris.
Creighton would have gotten it.
Yeah. Well, I watched Fast 5 last night because it's always on. Now the only
It's an
movie.
amazing film. It is a triumph of movie making.
Film.
Let me tell you something. Like it was probably my second or third favorite movie of all time up until the end of the credits. And then like the teaser rolls after the credits, and I exploded in the theater. I lost my beep.
Yeah.
Have I confessed to you? I mean, by the way, we're only going to talk about Verge and Verge staff and our own obsessions, and not actually talk about mobile news today. Have I mentioned to you that I've only watched the first one and none of the rest?
I hate you, Dieter.
Wait, Chris, quickly rank them. Rank them real fast.
Okay, Tokyo Drift #1.
Yes.
Fast 5 #2.
Yep.
The original #3. And Fast and Furious #4 and Too Fast, Too Furious #5.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely agree. I think that you might have Fast and Furious and the other one mixed up, but the second one.
Well, Tokyo Drift is amazing.
Yeah, best movie ever.
It is.
Okay, let's move on.
It is really good. Yeah.
That's it.
This is a teaser.
Come on, nano-SIM editor.
I don't feel right doing this without Creighton on. So yes, let's talk about nano-SIMs. So Financial Times, which broke the original nano-SIM controversy story, what was it, 4 or 5 months ago now, about Nokia and Apple getting into the spat over control of the 4FF standard. FT came out with this article yesterday saying that European carriers are already stocking up on nano-SIMs, which are about 40% smaller than the micro-SIMs used today, in preparation for the launch of the next iPhone. This is a crazy story on multiple levels, because what it means is this. If it's true, if the next iPhone is really going to use a nano-SIM, the only way that's possible is if Apple had gone ahead and used its nano-SIM proposal for designing the device well ahead of approval by ETSI, which is the standards body that's responsible for ratifying these SIMs. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, if any company in the world can go ahead and ignore a standards body, it's Apple, no question about it. Yeah. But still, that takes stones. And I don't know what would have happened if Apple had ultimately lost and the Nokia RIM Motorola standard had gone through. I don't know if Apple would have redesigned the iPhone, or if they would have gone rogue and gone with their own SIM. I wouldn't put it past them. But at any rate, it all worked out for them because ETSI ratified their SIM standard by a wide margin. So this is possible. It's definitely conceivable that this is going to happen.
I mean, I have to this whole controversy is funny because it was ever a controversy. But if you're the carrier representatives and you've got Apple saying we want this standard, and you've got RIM and Nokia kind of pushing for another one, don't you just instinctively side with Apple, who is selling the most devices for your networks?
Instinctively you do, but I have to admit, RIM, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you go through RIM's slide deck where they present their alternative standard, they make a pretty compelling argument for why they have the superior nano SIM. Like, there are a few things. One is that it has a little slot for your fingernail so that you can grip it and pull it out.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Also, it's physically impossible to get jammed in the slot, unlike Apple's version, a micro SIM slot, that is. Third, it has a notch in it which allows it to use push-push mechanisms like you'd expect with like a micro SD slot. With an existing micro SIM and with this new nano SIM, it's not really possible to get it into a slot that holds the SIM in place with a spring mechanism. Right. And to be honest with you, I have no idea how they're doing it on the Galaxy S III. No clue. I've studied the mechanism on this SIM holder for like a day, and I have no idea what they're using to hold the SIM in place, because there's no notch on a micro SIM that a latch could grab onto to keep it in place. But I tugged on that thing hard.
The Atrix HD does the same thing. It's a push-push.
What the heck is it grabbing onto on the SIM?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You'll know.
But anyway.
Chris, by the way, the idea of you spending a day just like staring at a Galaxy S3 SIM card slot, being like, how?
Well, he had to, because the SIM card got stuck in there, right? Or you had a problem with it?
Yeah. So when I first got the review AT&T Galaxy S3, it came with the review SIM in it, and I wanted to put my SIM in it, and there's like some label on the SIM or something that makes it really hard to get out. So when you press on it to pop it out, it would just like pop right back into place. And I tried everything. I disassembled the entire phone, but the problem is that the SIM slot is like it's like a single module. Like it's not possible to take apart the slot itself. It's just a metal sleeve. So I ended up taking tweezers and like a magnifying glass and getting in there and like wiggling the SIM very slowly for like 15 minutes until finally it came out without releasing the actual mechanism. And then I was able to put the new SIM in, push it, which like reset the mechanism into its original state, and then push it one more time, and it stuck the new SIM in. So it was a nightmare. It was an unmitigated nightmare. I tweeted about it.
The only thing about this nano-SIM controversy is, I mean, I know, I don't know. I suspect carriers are looking at ways to sort of push back on Apple's power in the ecosystem, but it never seemed, like Nilay said, it never seemed reasonable that this would be the place where they would intervene. I mean, they sell, well, the most phones next to Samsung, and I mean, they're going to go with what Apple wanted to go with. Was never really, the outcome was never in doubt for me, despite Chris's deep desire for there to be a SIM controversy.
No, Chris built a SIM controversy. I mean, he was out there, he was yelling at people.
I tried very hard to work everybody into a lather over this.
I mean, I read your hard-hitting editorial, Nokia, this is your last chance, make your stand now. Which, I mean, I know was very well received in Espoo.
It was. Look, I mean, Apple, inside Etsy, Apple is still nouveau riche, right? Like, they don't have...
They're like the hillbilly who came into oil money, who shows up in a Camaro because he thinks it's, hot and cool.
Blue bloods like Nokia who've been in this years, and they're like, who are these chumps that are coming in and telling us what SIM we're going to use?
Yeah.
Like
Tim Cook is going up to the buffet and he's like just eating caviar with a soup spoon because that's how he thinks it's done.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, what can you do?
So the other iPhone rumor is the Wall Street Journal says that Apple is working on a new screen technology that's called in-cell touch, where they integrate the touch sensor into the LCD itself so that they can remove yet another layer on the screen, which would make it, I suppose, look even closer to the Surface, but also allow for thinner phones. And I mean, I have no reason to doubt it. I mean, Apple's always, won on having the highest resolution screens up until, on their cycle. When they decide to upgrade the screen resolution, they're way ahead. And I mean, I see no reason to doubt this either.
Well, I think what's interesting is right now they have a couple touchscreen suppliers, right? They have Wintech, they have somebody else. I don't remember who the other one is. And this is like, if they move that production to the LCD, they're going to actually change kind of the balance of supply. And Apple's really famous for buying up tons of supply ahead of time. So that might actually free up capacity for other vendors to get better than what they're using touch technology. But it's such a marginal improvement. And it kind of feels like the iPhone rumor mill is in such like fervent throes right now that the New York Times will take anything. They're like, yep, we're gonna run this piece in the New York Times about a slightly thinner touch sensor. And that's kind of where we're at in the rumor cycle, where I think there's a lot of misinformation. Tim Cook was at D, and he was like, we're doubling down on secrecy. And I think there's actually keeping secrets. And then I think there is pumping out misinformation to mask the truth. And I think there's a lot of that happening as well. Not necessarily with the touch sensor. I buy that, but I think there's a lot of other crap out there in the world right now.
Absolutely. I would not be surprised if the faceplates that we kept seeing were deliberate misinformation on Apple's part.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't believe any single one of those. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't believe it at all.
Well, and we're seeing stuff again from accessory manufacturers, which we always see, and like, models and molds. And I mean, none of it looks all that realistic to me. I mean, the latest thing is like there's a metal back or a glass back, and then there's like two ridges on the top and the bottom. It just, I don't know. I mean, I guess the iPhone 4 seemed a little bit unbelievable when we started seeing it at first, but it just doesn't look believable to me right now, what we've seen from those molds.
I think it's gonna look substantially different. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they're gonna keep the same design and just make it taller or whatever.
Yeah, it's time for a new design. But I do completely believe the smaller iPad rumors. Completely believe those, 100%.
Yeah.
There's no question that Apple's seeding information to trip up the Nexus 7. Zero question.
Oh no, they're definitely doing that. Although it's funny because I have a Nexus 7 and it's kind of like, well, I get why I'd want this smaller form factor, but I keep using my iPad. At the end of the day, I browse the Nexus 7 because it's small and it's there, and I carry it around the house. And then it's weird, and I now have this like hierarchy of devices where like I have the Nexus 7, I'm on a site, I'm like, man, I need to like get into this a little more, and I go and browse it on the iPad, and then I'm like, I need to open multiple windows, and I go to the laptop. But it's funny because the Nexus 7 has taken over. It's like my in-house smartphone. Does that make any sense? That's how I feel.
That makes perfect sense. Like I'm using it all the time. Like I honestly, my iPad is kind of collecting dust right now. And I do a lot of web browsing, and I read Pocket and Amazon. That's like my main tablet activities, and Twitter, I guess. But like the Nexus 7 is great for all that stuff. I love reading on it.
Yeah.
Here's why I use the Nexus 7 over the iPad, and I'm only half kidding when I say this, because it hurts less when it falls on your face. It's a very real issue. I can't count the number of times I've dropped a tablet on my face, and having a lighter device fall on your face is definitely to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, that's really sad for you, Chris, by the way.
Come on, we've all done it. There are two groups of people in the world: those that are willing to admit that they've dropped a tablet on their face, and those that aren't.
I agree.
The last thing iOS related, iPhone related, is 9to5Mac got a screenshot from iOS 6 beta 3. And, we know that FaceTime over cell networks is coming, but apparently it popped up a message saying you needed to call AT&T in order to activate the feature, which seems to imply that it will be a contract add-on and not something that's just free. The message is to enable FaceTime over cellular on this account, contact AT&T or visit at.com/wireless.
This is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And if this is true, I will not stop until AT&T is dismantled once again. Can I just say this? This is terrible. I mean, I'm trying not to swear.
Podcast over. That's
what's happening right now. I'm desperately trying not to swear at AT&T, which I want to do. I mean, when the carriers opposed net neutrality for wireless, they said, well, we have to do it differently because wireless is different. We have to apportion data different. Data is so valuable that the cost per byte is so high. And now it's like, okay, well, it's so high that we're gonna cut off a feature that is entirely data dependent, right? It runs over Wi-Fi just fine, clearly just using raw data. We're gonna cut off this feature, and maybe we'll charge extra for it. And they're not going to charge per minute of calling on FaceTime, right? That ship has sailed. I don't think that you can bring back the per minute model. When they're moving, the rest of all of their services are moving to unlimited voice and text, right? So I don't think they can say, well, we're going to do minutes of video calling. That doesn't make any sense. So let's say they just tack on, you can get, my assumption is like $10 for unlimited FaceTime calling. Why did that data get so cheap? Why is that suddenly so cheap? This is, I mean, it's not. I mean, to me, it's just naked play to raise prices in some way on a feature that carriers know, that AT&T probably undoubtedly knows, people just aren't going to use that much of. People don't use FaceTime that much. And they're definitely not going to use FaceTime over AT&T's crappy fake 4G network. They're going to, use it when they need to. And they're going to pay the extra money, and AT&T will book $10 extra per customer without having to actually deliver any extra service because they are not forced by the government to regulate data like it's all the same bits. And I can keep going, and I can repeat myself in more and more angry ways, but that's the core of it.
Meanwhile, any number of other video chat applications work over cellular, and you don't get charged extra for them.
Right.
Skype. I forget what the new dialing app from. But
I'm saying Skype is next. Skype is next. I mean, they are going to come after Skype as hard as possible. They're going to say Skype VoIP services use too much data. Skype video calling definitely uses. I mean, this is inching open the door to basically the nightmare scenario. And the fight with net neutrality, when it was a big fight, was always the opponents of it saying, we've never regulated these networks. There's never been a problem. Why do you need to regulate proactively? And this is why. Because the profit motive, especially for wireless carriers who are driven entirely by boosting average revenue per user, it's too strong. The incentive for them to be assholes is too high. And that's just the end of the story.
The other thing is, I mean, let's not forget that carriers have had a voice and video standard that they've been working on for like 6 years. The IP multimedia system for VoLTE and video over LTE.
God, that's such a better name than FaceTime. They
trotted this out at Mobile World Congress again. Yeah. The IR94 protocol.
Right, you did a report on it there, right?
Yeah, and that's not ready, and so they can't get their own stuff ready. And we saw even at CTIA, Dan Hesse was railing about over-the-top services, which is, he feels like that. This is what's crazy. The carriers, like, they genuinely believe that it's not fair that they have to carry competitive services on their networks, like over-the-top stuff like Skype. Like, they genuinely feel like those things are problems. And so this is basically AT&T and presumably the rest of the carriers taking what could be one of the more popular over-the-top services and just slapping a charge on it because they can. And they still don't have their own competing video standard out there to like compete directly with it.
Yeah. So we talked to 4G Americas and a few other guys at CTIA about over-the-top services. And the only value proposition that carriers are really able to push with VoLTE and things like that are the fact that quality of service is guaranteed. And so that is what it's going to come down to is this is going to go one of two ways. And I think carriers are hedging their bets. If the net neutrality issues heat up to the point where doing things like charging extra for FaceTime is not a tenable business model, they'll just push that quality of service issue so hard and potentially intentionally degrade the quality of service on other services in ways that nobody can necessarily detect, so that you're going to be forced into paying, whether it's per minute or I don't know how they end up charging for things like video calling through their own standard that's interoperable with other carriers. That's one option. The other, of course, is they're able to manage the net neutrality issue long enough so that they can charge extra for things like FaceTime over 3G and 4G. My overly optimistic theory is that maybe this is just a feature they're putting in place so that, like a parental control type thing, so that you can't accidentally blow through your cap on FaceTime alone, which would probably be pretty easy to do if you were an aggressive FaceTime user and you had it enabled over 3G. So maybe they're just testing that block, because if you read the dialogue, it doesn't mention anything about an extra service or an extra charge. It's just a calls to enable it.
No, so, there's no way Apple is ceding a parental control to AT&T for this. I mean,
yeah,
no, this is the dialogue you get like when you want to turn on data on an iPad, right? I mean, it's the same thing. Well, it doesn't have pricing information on it.
And, actually, we need to throw some of the blame at Apple for this, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Apple keeps rolling over for AT&T. They're making
it possible. They're putting the hooks in for the carriers to see that FaceTime has been enabled. They're the ones that didn't, they let it not work over 3G. in the first place. And I mean, I know that carriers can tell when you're streaming. There's hardware and software built into phones so that they can toggle that on and off. And now AT&T and Verizon, whoever, they're going to see when you're using FaceTime. Like Apple has built the hooks into iOS for carriers to know how you're using your data. And as soon as the carriers know how you're using your data, they're gonna use that as leverage for their own advantage. And Apple's letting them do that.
And Apple rolled over for the 4G branding on the
4G,
4S,
yep.
Which I will go on record as saying is the lamest, stupidest lie in the world.
And they ended up getting burned for it in Australia, which is great.
but for a genuinely like 4G device, right? Like that device has LTE and it just doesn't work. God.
Yeah.
All these I should just run all the carriers. Can I just do that? Can I just run AT&T? That would be great.
You know what? If it was you versus Randall Stevenson, there's no question I'd take you.
That's funny. It's funny because you keep talking to, if they do what you're suggesting, which I've no doubt they will say we can't have strict net neutrality on our networks because we are moving voice to LTE. So we need to manage quality of service. And the FCC will say yes because the FCC is completely captured by the industry. So the FCC will say yes while they roll around in piles of secret money. So they'll do that, and then they'll adjust the quality of service, to screw with other services in the name of protecting voice. But AT&T can't complete a call. Like I don't have any, if AT&T was to say right now, like we will adjust the quality of our services to make our current 3G network work well, I don't know that people would complain. But it's not like they've demonstrated a good ability to actually manage that right now. What they've demonstrated is that they've built a gigantic network. They got the iPhone first, and then they have succeeded in basically screwing up ever since. And it's like, why should I trust you? Like, I would at this point. It's like, why wouldn't I just trust the government? Are they going to screw up more than you, AT&T? Because I don't know if that's possible. And I'd rather be able to like vote those people out of office. I mean, I can't. Let me put it this way, and I'm not in favor of some huge government regulation. I think that's equally.
Yes, you are.
I am. I'm a big government man. But just give me let me present two examples to you. There is this FaceTime situation, which is bad, and we're all going to complain about it, and I'm going to write about it, and my hair is going to light on fire, and I'm going to scream and yell about how it's a violation of what I believe should be a core principle of the internet. And then AT&T and Apple, they're just going to do it anyway. And that's it. That's the end of it. And it's not like a huge exodus of customers going to Verizon is going to stop it. It's not like Sprint is going to make a dent in the world, even though they offer unlimited data right now. And that should theoretically, subscribers should go to Sprint, but it's not going to happen. But earlier this year, there was a huge protest against SOPA, and our elected officials actually kind of heard it, and they stopped. They stopped moving on it. And that's at least responsive. We made enough noise so that some people were afraid for their jobs, and they stopped doing something that we thought was bad. And there has to be a hybrid in there somewhere where we can complain about the things that affect how our devices and our lives actually work and are organized, and then people are responsive to it. Because AT&T is not. AT&T is a monolithic company that is literally ruining the potential of mobile networks.
Well, it can be done. On that, the typical model for this sort of thing is, let the market fix it, right? There'll be some company that won't have crappy terms, that won't screw with your data and won't screw with net neutrality, and you can switch to them as a moral stance or whatever. But
I wish
the way
that was
spectrum
true.
Is locked up right now, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, if that was true, then the market would work, right? Then there would be, the market can only follow demand. It can only react to demand. But the market right now is demanding iPhones, and Sprint just got an iPhone, and its data is slower than everybody else's. Maybe when Sprint is on LTE and it's the same iPhone with fast data on compatible LTE networks, or comparable LTE networks, maybe I'll switch to Sprint. But right now, it's a bad deal for the user, right? I mean, you just get slower data.
The power dynamic in the U.S. wireless industry is dictated by some very strange and unique things that don't apply to any other industry, right? You have weird things like different spectrum isn't equal because 2500 megahertz spectrum sucks compared to 700 megahertz spectrum. And of course, there's a total limitation on the amount of spectrum that's available that is unchanging, basically. And these are and you have things like the iPhone and availability of the iPhone on different carriers, and these are very the depth of politicking that happens in this industry is hard to explain, I think. Like it goes so deep and it goes in so many different directions, and it's so hard to crack that it's very depressing, and I kind of want to cry about it.
Can I tell a story about corruption that I think I can tell now because it's been such a long time. And this is a scary story that I heard. So there were the AT&T T-Mobile hearings, the merger buyout hearings. And I have been told by a couple people who would know that Sprint was obviously protesting this merger. And the hearings were public, so people could go to them. And companies know that they're public, so they get people to stand in line to either hold their places or go attend the meetings and, be vocal and supportive. So AT&T had a bunch of people in line, but to make it seem as though Sprint was packing the house and tipping the scales kind of unfairly, AT&T put its supporters in Sprint T-shirts, which I think is the most insane thing I've ever heard. I mean, that's like the depth of crazy corruption that's kind of like happening.
Yeah,
and that story is I've heard. It could be a huge lie, but it's not something that I heard from people who wouldn't know. Does that make any sense? That makes sense.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Well, we should make a promise. I think it's very fair for us to make a promise to our listeners that we are going to proactively make it as difficult on AT&T as possible to implement this without being made to look like complete idiots. And if this does come to fruition, I think that we will all storm the castle. So
I'm coming for you, Randall.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you, and I'm going to demand that you make a phone call on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's your torture for the rest of your life. That's it. That's hell for Randall Stevenson. He has to make a 45-minute uninterrupted call on the iPhone on his own.
In New York.
In New York.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like AT&T's network, I've been screaming this from the highest hilltops for a year now. AT&T's HSPA network in Chicago during business hours isn't just slow or isn't just unreliable. It is literally a paperweight.
Yeah,
it is an airwave paperweight. It does nothing. Like
you ready to have your mind blown? In San Francisco, it's great. I have no problems.
I hate you.
It's insane. I was not expecting it, but the past like 2-3 months, when I came up here and now I moved up here, I have got zero problems on AT&T's HSPA, and on LTE, it's bonkers good.
That would actually, if HSPA worked well here, that would actually make the Galaxy Nexus a lot more compelling for me than it is.
Do we really want to go there?
Yeah, that could be a whole.
Anyway. Well, we should move on because we could literally just sit here and try not to swear for the next hour. This next thing, actually, I think I need Nilay to defend Samsung or defend patents, which is going to be crazy. So
that's one of the
we
other.
talked about this last week. Sprint and AT&T, the Galaxy S III, both had over-the-air updates pushed that I'm going to say broke how search worked. They used the Google search bar is no longer able to search on device. It can only search Google. And so we reached out for comment. We're waiting, and finally Samsung let us know. And here's Samsung's statement on these over-the-air updates that they pushed out. By the way, they pushed out like really quietly and called them like technical updates. Didn't actually say to users what they were breaking. Samsung has updated the software for the Galaxy S III as a precautionary measure to ensure that U.S. consumers may enjoy using our innovative products without interruption. And the context here, of course, is that the Galaxy Nexus, also a Samsung device, got temporarily injuncted because of this very search issue. So Samsung is actively breaking their phones because they are afraid that they're going to have an import ban on them, and they can't have that in the middle of what is their most important cell phone launch of the year.
Yeah.
And I mean, Nilay, I've heard you say many a time that the patent system is good because it forces people to design around things, and that makes them innovate. I mean, do you think that long term this fight here is going to be good for mobile search on phones, or are you going to agree that this is broken and it sucks?
This part is weird. I mean, this is like, well, how do I put this? This is bad, right? This is a bad result. This seems silly. Samsung's in a weird place because it doesn't make the software, right? So
right.
I think Samsung and Google probably pushed out this patch just to make sure that this launch could continue. But ultimately, it's on Google, right?
This is totally on Google, because the fix for this is to take the Google Search APK, the Google Search app, off of the old version and just reload it on there. I don't even think you have to jailbreak. Like, it's not like some piece of software that Samsung, intervened on or whatever. It's 100%, the straight up Google Search, I think out of stock Android that's on there that they took out.
Right. So, I mean, this is kind of the nature of how these phones are designed and sold and coded, right? I mean, there's just a split. So this is on Google to design around, right? I mean, and that's the core of this, is Google has to design around it, and maybe they will, and maybe they won't, and maybe this patent's overbroad, but the injunction is temporary, right? The judge says it's just likely you're infringing this patent. So Google has a lot of time to either prove the patent invalid and or design around it. So that's happening on this level. The fact that they give the software to Samsung and Samsung loads it on phones is like another part of the problem. I will say that this is like a tactics issue for Samsung, because the injunction is only on the Galaxy Nexus. The S3 is a colorably different product. And what Apple has been doing, I mean, Apple's whole argument with the judge has been, look, we can fight out the process on one phone, on one product. But Samsung puts out so many products so fast that it doesn't do us any good. We're all wasting our time. So, like, the Galaxy Tab 10.1, they got an injunction on that too, but, like, who cares? Samsung's 15 tablets deep into that line now. So it doesn't matter. And, Apple's, like, I think done a good job of convincing the judge that everyone is wasting their time arguing about whether one specific Samsung product should be blocked or should be the subject of the suit when Samsung puts out so many products so fast. So that's like a tactical issue or a tactical strategy from Apple that's working as far as I can tell. And I think Samsung has seen that it's working, and that's why they're taking a preemptive measure with the S3. Now, whether any of that is like how you want the system to work, I think is probably not.
Well, let me ask you this. So, I mean, Apple has to go after the person who ships the products. They have to go after Samsung and not Google, right? Because they have to go after the person that actually, what's the word, like implements the patent, right, in a shipping product.
No, the patent right covers make, use, or sell. Those are the three.
So why
you could go after Best Buy?
Is there a world where Apple could actually go after Google directly, and we could have the no holds barred wrestling smackdown that
world exists?
Waiting for? That
world kind of existed. Google bought Motorola, right? But Posner threw the case away. So I don't know that world was going to exist. We lived in that world for just one moment, and then a 73-year-old man in Chicago said that world was stupid and literally threw it away.
Well, actually, we need to talk about Posner. Can you? Because he popped up in the news because he said that there's some serious problems with the U.S. patent system.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't really gotten into Posner much on the mobile show. Can you give us the life history of this guy and why he's interesting and important for this conversation?
The life history is a long and storied history. So Posner sits on the Seventh Circuit. He's an appellate court judge, so he hears mostly appeals. He teaches at the University of Chicago Law School. He built and popularized, I would say, the field of law and economics, which is applying economic-style thinking to legal decision-making. I mean, he's a lion. He's the most cited judge, I think, the most cited judge who's currently living, and I think that might go back for decades. Tim Wu, who is a professor at Columbia Law School, who I think I'm a big fan of, and we had on The Verge, runs an entire project that's dedicated to just cataloging Posner's decisions. And he says he's the most influential living judge in America today. So he's he's a master of the field. And what's great about him is that not only is he unquestionably brilliant and like a master, he's also very like plain spoken. He's like Midwestern, right? So he's like very plain spoken. He doesn't take a lot of crap, and he kind of gets right to the heart of the matter. And this is him. He does. You can just. It's funny to like look at him because he's like, he looks like kind of like your cranky grandfather, right? And so what's great about him, in
Actually, it's amazing to see him on camera with you talking because it looks like you're speaking through his mouth.
So just to wrap up the history part, one of the main reasons he was never nominated to the Supreme Court was because he is so outspoken and so direct in his decisions and his speaking that it was basically agreed upon by everybody that he would never get through the confirmation process because he says what he thinks too much, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, so as an appellate court judge, you get to basically slum it whenever you want and go and preside over trials to like keep yourself sharp, to just participate in the game. Because otherwise you'd only be hearing appeals. You wouldn't be participating at the trial level at all. So he said, I'm interested in patents. Let the court in Wisconsin know where this case had been filed, and they transferred it to him so he could hear this case. And I would characterize his handling of Apple versus Motorola as testy. Chris, you went to one of the trial dates, right?
Yeah. It was a hearing. It was a hearing. And it was, I have to say, I didn't expect to be entertained, but it was extremely entertaining. It was theater.
Yeah, I mean,
it was pretty amazing.
I mean, Apple has very good lawyers, and he kept on saying, you have really good lawyers, but why are their arguments so bad? And he said it to Samsung too, although Samsung appeared to bumble a little bit more than Apple. And I mean, he basically was like annoyed with Apple and Samsung's lawyers the entire time. He was like, none of these arguments not Samsung, Motorola. He was basically annoyed with Apple and Motorola's lawyers the whole time. He was, why are your arguments so bad? Why should I block sales based on one patent when you can't even prove what that patent is worth? And ultimately, he threw away the case, right? He threw away the case and said, nobody here has shown me what the damages for patent infringement are. And by damages, you mean lost sales, lost profits, what the royalties would have been had you actually paid them. And Motorola said, well, we'd love to license these patents, but they costed, 2.26%, 2.25% of every retail price of the iPhone, which is an insane number, right? It's way out of what the industry norm says sort of thing would be. So Posner is like, look, neither one of you has adequately prepared a case to show me how much money would solve this problem. And because you can't show me how much money would solve this problem, that means you don't know, which means you can't quantify the amount of injury that you've suffered, which means you probably haven't suffered any injury. Out you go. Which is, in terms of like legal reasoning, you only get to do that when you're Judge Richard Posner, right? Nobody else gets to jump to the end and say, screw it, like go to the appellate court. Because if you think about it, trial court judges, and this is true, and I think this is probably little known, trial court judges are graded by how often they're overturned, right?
Right.
So they generally chart a safe course. They rule kind of black and white. They like referee, which is, I think, for better or worse. And they say, well, you go to appeal, and hopefully I'll be upheld because either there's no issue to appeal because I did everything right, or the law is wrong, but I guessed right on the law. But Posner doesn't have that problem. I mean, he's hit the top of his field. There's nowhere else for him to go. So he gets to do whatever he wants. So he basically said, this is stupid. I don't know why we're having a trial, and threw it out. And he told Reuters, he said, I was really looking forward to holding a trial, but I didn't think I could hold one just because I was interested in it, which is wild. And so his critiques of the patent system boil down to, you've got industries like pharmaceuticals, you've got, which have huge fixed costs for development, right? And a drug company says, we're going to develop this drug, and they file the patent on something, on what the drug does or the chemistry of the drug. And then they have to sit and wait while the FDA does trials. So they can't make their money back from development until about halfway through the patent period. And then they can, drugs are easily cloned. So a competitor can come in and sell a generic for a much lower price, and they don't get to recoup their money, right? So Posner says, fine, we should give patent protections to drug companies because they need to recoup the cost of development. That makes sense. But it doesn't make sense to do it in software because the development costs are much lower. If you finish a product and begin selling it, you get to start getting your money back right away. There's no FDA trial period. And competitors can steal the core idea, but they can't steal your product, right? Your product can be colorly better because of a feature, but that doesn't, in the end, you don't have a patent on the iPhone. You have a patent on video technology in the iPhone, and nobody cares about that. So we should split up patents by industry, which I think is exactly right. by the way.
Really? Who gets to decide where patents apply and how they apply per industry? Like that seems
I think the
crazy to me.
The simple one is just to define very simply what a software patent is, which doesn't exist. Like that definition of what is a software patent does not currently exist in the United States. It exists in Europe, and they said these things are software patents, and they're not allowed, and they don't have software patents. We never even got that far, right? We have lumped together software patents with business method patents, with all kinds of. We have a lot of ideas about patenting abstract things like math and ideas and process, but we've never actually just come out and said this box of things is a software patent, and you can't have it. And the fight, we've been trying to have the fight in the courts, and that doesn't work, right? And I think because courts aren't designed to make laws, right? And I wrote this huge editorial.
Neither is Congress.
Yeah, apparently, right? But courts are like really not designed to make laws. Like they're bad at it. What they do is they draw narrow lines around existing laws and say either that your case fits into this law or it doesn't fit in the law, or we're going to make we say these facts fit into law, and so people they design their products and their legal strategy around weird old facts from old cases, not ideas and concepts that make sense to have laws around. So for a while, for example, in the United States, the court said you can't patent software, but you can patent a computer, and softwares makes all computers into specific machines. So literally we had Ross is trolling me through this window right now. He's here to deny things. I love you too, honey. So literally we had a period in the United States. We had a period in the United States where our patent office believed that software turned computers from general purpose computers into specific types of machines. And that was our justification for software patents. Now that is insane. That's just generally that is an insane place to be. And we shouldn't be trying to monkey around logic that way because we're making laws through the courts. So I mean, I think the first step, and I think this Posner decision, all of the smartphone litigation, all the money that's clearly being wasted in smartphone litigation, it's the first step to somebody saying, let's legislate what a software patent actually is and decide what we want to do with them. And I think what we want to do with them first is say, let's pull back the term from 20 years to like 3. And have it be so, great. You invented slide to unlock. That's a really good idea. And, maybe it wasn't there before. You only get 3 years to say that's ours. You don't get 20 because that's stupid. The end. Am I just going to keep ranting on the show, by the way?
No, I'm sorry. I was distracted because somebody in chat recommended that we take a photo of the Nexus Q for the site, stopping a door open as a doorstop, and one of our writers has come through with that very image, and it's pretty exciting.
American made.
No, so I mean, here's the thing: that's a beautiful dream, Nilay, but it's not going to happen, right?
No.
I mean, we're not going to get
Posner.
to that place.
One of the things that Posner said during the hearing Posner.
Posner.
Yeah. How do you know?
Law school.
I mean, really?
I'm going to go with law school.
That's okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. You really got a law school learning how to pronounce people's names.
You win this argument. One of the things that Posner said during the hearing that I absolutely loved. So Apple's lawyers were extremely smooth talking. I mean, they were so eloquent with their arguments. They really sort of put you into this trance. Everyone except Posner, of course. And at some point, Posner said, why don't you just license your effing patents to Motorola?
Yeah.
Without the effing. And Apple's like, because we don't have to, and we don't want to. And Posner's like, that's not a good enough reason.
Thing, right? I mean, this was Motorola's argument. They're like, well, yeah, we'd be happy to license it at insanely expensive terms. And like, this has been a debate. Like, it's going on in other industries too. Doesn't Microsoft huffy about Frand as well?
Yeah, I mean, but that's what Chris is saying. There are some that are. You have 2 ways to make monies. You have, well, 3 ways. You have 3 ways to make money with your patents, right? You can take kind of the guaranteed money. You can say, well, we invested into radio technology, so we're going to give that stuff to Etsy and say, build 4G with it, and then we'll get money because everybody has to use our patent to build 4G stuff. So that's great. That's Frand. You can say, we're going to make great products, and our patented technology will be a differentiator, and our products will be better, noticeably better because of our stuff. Nobody else can have it. We'll make a bunch of money. Or you can be a patent troll. And those are kind of your three options. And Motorola has mostly picked the Frand route. And now the argument is whether what they're asking for is actually fair rates to use their technology. And like, that's one way. But Apple doesn't really participate in that stuff for any of the patents they're litigating with. So they get to just say, no, we're going to make better products than anybody else. And that's kind of a big, I mean, again, this comes down to like the term. Like, they should be able to do that. That's great. You invented something, you should be able to profit from it because you invested the time and the money into developing it. But not for 20 years, especially not in software and technology. That's 15 generations of stuff. I mean, 20 years ago, there wasn't like the internet as we use it now, right? Like, that makes no sense. 20 years ago, there weren't smartphones in the way that we think of them now. Like, that's too much time, especially in the technology field, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to have this conversation for the next 20 years, the length of the patent, because I don't see this changing.
I think Apple and Google will settle. I think eventually it will cost them too much. I mean, Apple and Microsoft did this dance for years, right? And eventually they just gave up.
They settled because like Apple was running out of money, right? Like, they couldn't afford to keep going on. And I mean, do you see Apple or Google running out of money anytime soon? I mean, that's not going to happen.
I think they'll run out of will. I think that's what's really going to happen. And I think now that Motorola is fully owned by Google, I think I can see a lot of this coming down to them just saying, screw it, we're cross-licensing everything, go at it. I mean, that's what should have happened months ago. It's stupid that it's not happening, quite frankly. I mean, we wouldn't be having conversations about whether or not the patent system is a mess if Apple, in particular Apple, would stop saying, you're copying our stuff over and over again in the most like pedantic way, because and that's just how it's going to go. I mean, eventually, I think Apple will realize that, like the Motorola case, they lost bad, right? They spent a ton of money, they sued Motorola, they got nowhere with it. What did that gain them? I don't think it gained them anything. It's certainly not. Look, they're going to sell a lot of Galaxy S3s. A lot of them around the world, and because it's not going to hurt Samsung that it doesn't have a search feature for the phone. And I think Apple one day has to realize they're spending money and they're gaining nothing. But
let me ask you, Nilay, this is more of a question for existing customers, but I've wondered, and I think Dieter was teasing this before too. They've basically hoodwinked existing customers by saying there's a security update that you have to download. And by the way, at least on my AT&T model, it was forced. You couldn't not accept the update. And they've nerfed the device. So what are the legal implications of that for existing users who purchase a device expecting a certain level of functionality, and now over the air, magically, they've had this functionality removed?
Does anybody use this functionality? I've never once used on-device search on my Android phone.
But it doesn't matter, though.
It sucks on Android. No, but that's because it sucks on Android. On-device search on other phones is great, and I use it all the time. When I use those other phones. So like,
what other phones?
You're talking about the out about this is it's not a core feature to Android using the Google search bar to search your phone. But Palm OS, Windows Mobile, Web OS, like all that stuff, being able to directly search the phone was amazing.
That's besides the point, though. You can argue that it's not a good feature, but you're still missing functionality that you had when you purchased the device, and you were forced to lose that functionality by an OTA that was pushed to you. So it seems to me like Samsung is on very shaky legal ground there.
They're on shaky legal ground, but keep in mind that by Apple's logic, they never had the right to sell that functionality to you in the first place. So
but
I mean, that's like saying like, dude, I sold these TVs and I sold them to you, and you getting mad when the cops come and take the TVs back. I mean, it doesn't immunize the wrongful possession of the television.
But the consumer is an innocent bystander in all this. Right?
This is some real Fast and Furious logic.
No, the consumer is a dirty criminal for buying a phone that broke Apple's patents. They're fully to blame for buying a Galaxy S3. They should have known that Apple had a patent on that search process.
Well, I mean, maybe look. what Chris is saying is right. Like from a consumer perspective, Samsung isn't doing itself any favors, right? They should be telling people what they're doing, but they're not going to get themselves in legal trouble by proactively complying with an order that affects their phone. Like I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. I guarantee you there'll be some crappy class action lawsuit filed against Samsung.
Yeah.
But that happens.
I mean, if a phone looks at you funny, somebody files a class action lawsuit. I mean, every single device that comes to market.
Yeah,
I'm gonna file a class action lawsuit against the Atrix HD. I think. Oh, I'm changing the subject for being ugly.
Nice.
Yeah,
it is.
It's an unfortunate phone.
Here's the thing: it's ugly, but. And like the screen is good, but it's, we were talking about this before the show. Like it's good, but it's not like the most beautiful looking screen because it sits kind of far back from the glass. But it's LTE. It's an S4 processor. It's Android 4.0. Like if you can get past looking at it, it's great.
It's a great personality, is what you're saying. Do you have the black one?
Yeah, I do, and the black one looks much, much better than the white one because the white one, just like the Droid Razr. Which this is basically like a really bland, boring version of the Droid Razr. It has this Kevlar back, and so the white one still has the black Kevlar black, and just the plastic is white.
I mean, we have the white one in the office, and it looks terrible. It looks like the worst. It looks like a Motorola made a Chinese clone of itself. Which is
and actually this came out in China in one version in this form factor, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, it's only $100, and it's like I said, like there's nothing critically wrong with it, and the skin is great. Like it's
$100 if you buy a 2-year contract.
Well, right.
Would you spend 2 years with that phone?
No. Well, I mean,
just Dieter, think about yourself a year from now. Are you still using the Atrix HD?
No.
That's the only answer you need. What score did you give it?
I gave it a 7.7, which, so it's definitely not in the Galaxy S III 1X class. I think those are 8.6s on the site. I mean, not to get like too deep into the score, but like it's surprisingly good for a $99 phone. It's just it's disappointing that it's $100 differentiation over a 2-year contract, right? Like for as good as it is, you'd like to feel like you're getting a little bit better value, if that makes sense. I'm not quite saying it right. Like it overachieves, but that doesn't mean that you should buy it. Is basically what I'm saying.
I mean, I really think phone manufacturers. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, it occurs to me, I just now realized that Motorola has a similar problem to HTC in the U.S. in that I think that Razr is exclusively licensed to Verizon.
It is,
and I'm sure that Motorola would love to use Razr on all 4 U.S. nationals.
Well, the Razr name, and I'm assuming the Razr sort of industrial design. I don't know if Verizon has an exclusive on that. I mean, they've released stuff in other markets that have looked pretty darn close to the Razr.
No, but it's the name. So I think in Europe it's called the Razr, and there is a phone in Europe called the Razr. I think Droid Razr. I think they probably have a deal to let Razr only be on Verizon while the Droid Razr exists.
Yeah,
and I think that sucks. But like. Man, I don't know. Like, I think phone manufacturers should prioritize the screen and the experience of touching the screen and like looking at the screen over everything else. And I don't know why it's the first place where you cut cost. Like, I would take a slower processor and a great screen. There's no point in having the S4 in there if I don't want to look at the screen.
I have a theory that Motorola just isn't very good at sourcing components. I think that that is probably their greatest weakness internally, is their ability to negotiate deals with the people they need to be talking to get the best displays, the best processors, and the best memory. I mean, this is the first, Dieter, you and I were talking about this yesterday. I think this is the first Motorola in a long time to use a Qualcomm processor. Maybe ever.
Yeah.
Nah, it couldn't be ever. But, up until now, they've been using OMAP 4s mostly. And their displays have always kind of been a half notch or a full notch below the best on the market. So this is something that Google is going to have to massage and help them with a little bit, I think.
I mean, I will never forget sitting in the Droid Razr introduction when they're like, this display is better than the iPhone's display, and then getting the review in it like 3 days later and being like, what insane drugs what are you talking about? Like, no, it's not.
It looks like a checkerboard. Yeah. It looks like a checkerboard.
Oh man, And I will never forget the incredible hate mail I got from Android fanboys when I wrote the review of the Droid Razor and I said the screen looked bad.
Well, this is an LCD screen with color boost.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
I'm so tired of branded, like, I'm going to tweak the colors on the screen stuff. I forget what Sony's Bravia engine.
Yeah.
And now this is color boost.
No,
like,
it's the Bravia engine with reality display. That's Sony.
With reality display, excuse me.
Yeah.
Like, just, you know what? Be accurate. Make a screen. Don't have horrendous subpixels. And don't go trying to boost the vividness and the vibrancy of colors in like particular apps, because you're wasting software development cycles that could be put towards making the rest of your OS not look like crap.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you a question. Nexus 7. Do you think the screen looks washed out? Because I think the screen looks really washed out on the Nexus 7.
Yeah. The blue.
Yeah.
You notice it in the blue.
Yeah. Like I look at like the Chrome logo and I'm like, huh, it's just really not a lot of pop there.
Look, it's an Asus. It's a $200 Asus. You know, I mean, Google can't work miracles.
It's a $200 Asus that will only charge off of its own charger.
Oh my God!
No, mine. You know what mine charges off of? I have that Motorola little plug with the 2 USB ports. Charges just fine off of that thing.
Really?
Yep.
I've had it fail on. I mean, I managed to get it to charge off a Samsung wall wart, but it's failed on almost everything I try on it except for the one it came with and a couple others.
Yeah. Are you going to write some hard-hitting editorial about this, Chris?
So let me, first of all, this is
the answer isn't no, by the way.
This is a great opportunity for me to spend 20 minutes talking about my Nexus 7 buying experience this weekend. So on Friday, I discovered that Apt, which is a big local electronics shop, had a few. They got something like 100 Nexus 7s in stock that day, and they had 9 left in the evening on Friday evening. So I drove out there and picked one up, and I couldn't get it to charge off my computer. I'm like, oh, that's right, it doesn't charge off anything. So I pulled out the charger from the box, plugged that in, wasn't charging off that, and I was starting to freak out. So finally, I went to the Nexus 7, the official. Let me emphasize this because it's going to be important later in the story. I went to the official Nexus 7 support page, google.com/Nexus/support, I think is the address, which is in the Nexus 7 manual, may I add. And they have an 800 number that you can call. So I called into the number, and this guy answered after maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I said, hey, I can't charge my Nexus 7. And he's like, oh, your card was declined. I'm like, no, you're not. That's not what I'm trying to. It's not what I'm trying to say. I have the Nexus 7 in my hands, and it won't charge off any cable, any wall wart that I've tried. I've tried 3 or 4 at this point. Nothing works, including the official one. And he said, oh, well, you should have bought it from us because we'd be able to help you. But because you didn't, you're going to have to go back to the store. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like the right answer to me. Don't I have a warranty? And he's like, no, you need to go back to the store.
Wow.
So at that point, I flew off the handle and kind of flipped every object in my place. And
you were raging on Twitter.
If you check my Twitter timeline, you'll see probably 20 tweets about this. I went off on Google Plus too. And long story short, I went back to Apt the next morning, exchanged it, no problem. I was fine. But that's kind of besides the point. Like, I never expected to have problems with Apt. What concerns me is that if Google wants to seriously get into the direct hardware business, which I believe it does, we still have that pending rumor about a bunch of Nexus phones coming later this year, which I'm assuming Google is going to be pretty heavily involved in. They have the Q, which they are literally making themselves. It's not ODM'd out to somebody else. And of course, the Nexus 7 is very heavily branded as a Google device. It was introduced at a Google event by Google employee. You go to a Google website to get support for it. If they want to seriously pursue this, they need to take ownership of these products. They need to take an Apple approach. Apple's approach to customer support is legendary. I mean, I can't emphasize it enough. I've had every iPhone model over the years, and I've probably on 3 or 4 occasions, I've had to take a model back. And literally every time I go to the Genius Bar, I hand them my phone, they hand me a new one, and I walk out of the store. I mean, like, it doesn't get any better than that. And Google's going to have to step up to the plate if they want to keep going down this path. They can't be passing the buck. So that really bothered me. But the end of the story is that the new one works fine. I love it. It's a great tablet. My favorite tablet, I think. I'm going to have to spend more time with the iPad. But yeah, that really bothered me.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just imagining what a Google store next to the Apple store or the Microsoft store would be. It'd just be like a guy at the front. He'd ask you what you want. You'd tell him, and then
he would Google
15 spammers would run up to you and offer you crap you don't want.
No, it would be a great story. You would go into it, and people would just Google it for you. That'd be that would be a service my parents would use.
Yeah,
but here, they don't need brick and mortar stores, right? Like I really don't think that they do. They just need to coddle customers, and that I'm sure that's not cheap, but it really is part of the total ownership experience, and it makes a huge difference. You can't just sell these to, and I don't blame Google for being a newbie with this, a noob, if you will, but they're gonna need to they're gonna need to learn.
I mean,
anyway.
They shouldn't be new with this. I mean, they've been running consumer-facing products for you. You know who can call Google is advertisers because they spend the money. And at the end of the day, nobody's spending the money. Even with the Nexus 7, Google gets no money from that purchase. And I think until that starts happening, we're all screwed. I mean, that's just the end of it. And, Google gets away with Android because theoretically you're supposed to call your carrier, not Samsung or HTC or anybody.
Right.
So your carrier can just lie to you.
Yeah.
God.
Okay. Jelly Bean Android 4.1. It rolled out to the Galaxy Nexus. Whatever. They put the Verizon Galaxy Nexus back in the open source project. That's whatever. Like it's rolling out to devices. That's great. I don't care. Android 4.1 has been hacked on the HTC HD2, and that's awesome.
It's funny because when we were talking about the story when we first heard about it, I laughed and I said, it's funny because the HD2 has better update support than most Android phones that get sold today. And then we all laughed for a while, and then Chris was like, but it's true.
Yeah.
And then we realized that we had to let people know. I
don't own one of these, and I'm really unhappy because I could have literally run every single mobile operating system since it was released on this phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's a legendary phone for what it is. I remember, they showed it off for the first time in the U.S. on the Engadget show when we were still hosting it, and I remember holding it. I think it was it Drew? I don't remember who was on the show with us, but whoever it was, I remember asking, "Why did you work this hard for Windows Mobile? Why?" And they're like, "We don't. I mean, it's a really nice phone, though, right?" And we're like, "Yeah, but why did you?" Why? And then they had no answer. And then the next year, all they made was Android phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the sad thing is that they're right back in the same.
Oh, totally.
I mean, now they're just beholden to Google instead of Microsoft.
Hey, Chris, remember when we wrote that storming editorial about how HTC should buy Palm?
Yes. It should have happened.
Remember how they just laughed at us and said that they were happy being a reseller of other people's operating systems? And
you know what, Nilay? It still can happen.
I'm just saying, man. We had the solution mapped out for them. We made probably a better business case for it than anybody at Palm at the time, and HTC just blew it.
At this point, they can get a far better deal for Palm than they could in what was it, 2009 or whatever.
I bet Ruby was just like, "Look, what kind of tequila do you have?" And HTC is like, "That's not how we do business, sir." And Ruby is like, "Well, I'm going with HP because that Mark Hurd guy, he got me drunk." That's basically how I believe.
If you haven't seen the Onion report on HP is going to try that cloud thing, you it's amazing.
Is that the headline? That sounds like an Onion headline.
No, yeah, it's a video. It's amazing. It's super good.
Oh God.
We'll have it up on the site shortly. Yeah, I mean, so 4.1, it's rolling out. The 4.1 rollout is weird. I've gotten the update notification 3 times on my devices. I've already got 4.1 and I've got it again. And I think part of that's because I have a developer device, but I know that other people have reported this on Twitter that I just got another update again. And I keep on expecting the search bar to break, but it doesn't. So that's good, I guess.
Yeah, my Nexus 7 has already gotten 2 updates and I just got it on Friday. So they're obviously still tweaking 4.1. It felt like they were really chomping at the bit to get it out ASAP, And I think that maybe they cut a couple QA corners that they wouldn't necessarily cut under normal circumstances. I don't know what the rush was, but they wanted to get it out ASAP. I think that it hit retail Galaxy Nexuses before most people expected it to by a few days or a few weeks. So yeah, now they're
well, no,
they're
they
going
had to, right? Because they had to get around the injunction. That's why they rushed it out to get around the injunction.
No, but the update still like on-device search works on Jelly Bean. It's you if I type in INSTA in the search box, Instagram on the phone, the app is the first result.
Do you get also, you know what I get? There's also an emoji character of a middle finger and an Apple logo.
You know,
That'd be
I
awesome,
was so excited about emoji support in 4.1.
What is wrong with you?
It turns out that you need to enable the Japanese keyboard to get it working.
Yeah, you also need to be a Japanese schoolgirl, Chris. That's the other thing that you need to enable.
Eli, find me another way to text message people pictures of poop, and we can talk.
I can find you another way. I mean, that is actually not a difficult problem to solve.
Emoji is the only way I know how to do it.
I want somebody to take the Nilay telling Chris he needs to be a Japanese schoolgirl out of context and just post that clip by itself.
I've many times wished that. So let me say this about Jelly Bean. I mean, I've only used it on the Nexus 7 because did I tell you that Verizon deactivated I had a review unit Galaxy Nexus, and they deactivated it on my wedding day, which was very nice of them. A very nice wedding present from Verizon. I mean, it's a review unit. I should have sent it back forever ago, but it was just funny. Anyway, so I've only really used it on the Nexus 7, and I have to say, there's like a level of polish and cleanup to it. I mean, it is, I will say, much more beautiful to use as an operating system than anything else I've used, period. I mean, iOS included. I mean, iOS is great. I think there's two things about iOS that keep me coming back. One, I think the hardware is better all around on all those devices. And I can't get the combination of high-end Android hardware with a beautiful screen and Jelly Bean right now because I'm stuck with a Galaxy Nexus and I don't like that screen. And second, Pocket Planes. And if I could somehow get those two things on Android, I would be very tempted to switch over. Because Jelly Bean is tremendously beautiful. And I highly recommend it to all of you.
Jelly Bean is great, but I don't think, I mean, this was basically all of last week's podcast, but I really don't think that the delta between ICS and Jelly Bean is large enough to justify buying a Galaxy Nexus just because you want Jelly Bean.
I know. This is your drunk belief, but it is.
That's probably true. Like, I mean, we don't need to get deep into this, but I will say that the difference between 4.0 and 4.1 is not as obvious and clear as it could be. You know, it's faster is the main thing that's going to happen for other Android manufacturers. But I am pretty sure that Samsung and HTC and Motorola and everybody else and LG are going to say, well, 4.0 is good enough for now. We don't need to worry about pushing 4.1 out quickly. And we're going to just, we're never going to see 4.1 hit a whole bunch of phones that otherwise would have.
Yeah.
No, I mean, without question, they've all, I mean, I don't know how it works, but in my mind, all the engineers at Samsung worked really hard to get ICS on like 15 different variants of the S2. And now they're like literally on vacation and they're not going to work again until like 6 months from now. And then it's going to take them another year to do whatever.
I think it's literally a mathematical equation for most of these companies. They need to calculate how much of a boost they're going to get by being able to say that they're running the latest version of Android versus where the product is in its life cycle, right? Because if it's cooling off, if it's about to be replaced, if it's about to be pulled off shelves by the carrier because it's aging, there's no monetary benefit to rush an update out or to get it out at all. Whereas if a product is early in its life cycle and they can get it out in a reasonable amount of time, maybe it will light a fire under their ass. I don't know. Depends on the product.
Maybe. Do you want me to start ranting about carriers again? Because I can segue right into that. But let me just do it. Give me 30 seconds, Peter. I promise. Look, I firmly believe that if Samsung could sell an unlocked S3 with stock Android on it and have consumers like us buy it and put it on carriers without having to worry about approvals and all the other BS, they would do it because Samsung makes so many different products that it doesn't hurt them to make a stock Android variant of the S3. It doesn't hurt them at all. And I know they could just do it very quickly and very easily. But because they have to go through carriers, we will never see that phone, which is kind of the phone that I want. Or actually what I want is the HTC One X with stock Android. But whatever, it doesn't matter. We're never going to see these phones because we are under the grip of a terrible carrier regime. The end. Dieter, was that 30 seconds? I think I made it.
I think that was really good.
Yeah.
Let's move on. There's just a couple more things I want to talk about. I mean, Sprint has lit up LTE in a bunch of like random cities, like Dallas or Kansas City or something.
It's just like two states, right? 2 states.
Yeah.
It's LTE in giant air quotes though, because it's mega slow.
Is it?
Right.
How slow is it?
It's not. I mean, let's put it this way: you're not seeing 45 megabits down on Sprint LTE like you are occasionally on AT&T.
Wow. And
it just comes down to I think we all knew that this was going to happen because of the very bizarre Rube Goldberg machine-like implementation that Sprint needs to go through in order to roll this out. Right? It's crazy what they're having to go through. This is right now they're only on 1900. I think, is that right?
They're not that's
using,
right.
Yeah, they're not using 2.5 at all yet, and they haven't repurposed the iDEN spectrum yet. So they're ramping up LTE on 1900 and ramping down CDMA, and moving that elsewhere. And they lost the Light Squared deal, obviously. So yeah, I mean, like, my hat's off to the tech guys inside Sprint for planning this out and actually getting it rolled out. There are many ways that it could have gone wrong, but I don't think that using the spectrum that they have available right now for this deployment, they could have really made it much faster.
You might say it's in beta.
Say it's in beta. Finally. Yes.
I've been waiting, man. I've been ranting about policy this whole time. I apologize for being so late.
That's frequent listeners of the show will recognize that as a Vlad Savov classic.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for that.
I do. I do what I can.
We can't. Oh well, okay. And actually, as long as we're like, T-Mobile still doesn't have any plan for LTE. Like, they're like cruising for death.
No, they have some stupid plan, right?
Yeah, they have a plan. It's just that it's going to be. One? Yeah, well, I think that they're doing what they can with what they have, and actually, we should talk about T-Mobile and Verizon and Spectrum Co., which is one of our longest running story streams on the site right now, I think.
I was trying to get the podcast to not be 3 hours long, but okay, go for it. Well, no,
we can burn through this really fast. I just think it's hilarious, and we need to point out that T-Mobile's tone changed real fast when Verizon said, "Tell you what, if we get this Spectrum Co. deal, we'll let you buy a slice of this AWS spectrum we're planning on getting out of it." All of a sudden, T-Mobile's like, "Oh, this is great. The government should approve this ASAP." And it sounds like the FCC is basically behind it at this point. The problem they're having is that this entire deal is tied up with these co-marketing deals that affect FiOS and Comcast Cable and Time Warner, and that's a DOJ issue, not an FCC one. And so, as long as those deals are joined at the hip, they need both FCC and DOJ approval, and DOJ isn't expecting to rule until next month, and we don't know how that's going to go down yet. But it sounds like they still have some pretty big concerns. But it was just hilarious to me that T-Mobile sort of reneged on its entire belief system the instant Verizon said, "Oh, we'll give you some of this AWS spectrum." You know, and here they are sitting in the RCA. It's just, I mean, it just goes to show you that even the most seemingly principled companies in the industry have no principles. They're still in it for what's best for the here and now for them, and that can change on a dime. Sprint, for instance, which was I think the single most vocal opponent to the T-Mobile AT&T merger, which I think we can all agree would have been to the detriment of the industry if it had gone through, is with Verizon and AT&T on the topic of net neutrality. And you can go and read their opinions on it. I mean, like, they are vocal proponents of not allowing the FCC to rule on net neutrality on wireless networks.
Yeah. I was Sprint.
That's the end of my rant. I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, we've really taken it to carriers on Is this what happens? Just because I
what else are you gonna do? I mean, they deserve it.
Yeah.
I like this person in the chat, by the way, just asked, where did Sprint's name come from? Sprinting? Which is good. I like it.
Sprint is an acronym.
No.
Yep. Yes,
no.
It is. It comes from the name of a railway. Sprint used to be owned by a railway on the West Coast.
Surviving
Switched
poor
private network telecommunications.
This is a backronym, guaranteed.
Okay, so I was wrong. But they were owned by a railway. Dieter, find it. They were owned by Santa Fe or something.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. Poor Sprint.
When SPC was only Wikipedia, man. I mean, Chris, you should be really proud of me that I'm depending on Wikipedia here. When MCI released ExecuNet, SPC took the FCC to court to offer the right to get offer switched services, and succeeded. They needed a new name to differentiate the switched voice service from SpeedFax, and they ran an internal contest to select one. The winning entry was an acronym for Switched Private Network Telecommunications. Citation needed.
In other words, that fires.
Yeah. In other words, the person who thinks they should have been credited for naming Sprint is pissed and on Wikipedia.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Oh man.
We can't end without talking about. Well, Chris, do you want to talk about the Huawei stuff?
Oh God. Yeah. So Huawei, which is making a pretty big push into the U.S. market right now.
Huawei decided that for phone you shouldn't buy, right?
Actually, so they came out with. I have to admit, it's a pretty clever video where they're going around Times Square asking people how they pronounce Huawei, because nobody knows how to pronounce it, and rightfully so, because it's a really weird word. And actually, I take issue with the fact that they're continuing to use that word as they push into the U.S. market, because I think it's going to end up being a pretty big barrier to entry for them. But that's another story for another time. They came out to Taste of Chicago, which is a pretty big festival, annual festival in Chicago, and set up this booth, this product booth, where they're showing all their latest products. And they debuted 3 phones here last week. So I think is the first time in my entire history in this business that a phone company has shown new phones for the first time in Chicago. It was a very special moment for me. Just a shame it was these phones.
It had to be Huawei.
Yeah, they showed the myTouch and the myTouch Q, which are actually replacements for older models of the same name from LG. And of course, they're for T-Mobile, which owns the myTouch name. I'm really upset with where T-Mobile has taken the myTouch brand, because initially it was kind of a high-end brand name for them, right? They had the myTouch 4G, which was an HTC device, pretty high-end model at the time, and they've sort of devolved since then into being this very entry-level product that isn't priced appropriately. And I suspect that T-Mobile is still kind of trying to figure out how to price these products. The myTouch and myTouch Q are $49 on contract. You take your pick. One is a slab, and the other looks exactly the same, except it's thicker and has a slide-out landscape QWERTY keyboard. But the displays are just terrible. The skins are thick. They're
they still have ridiculous speaker grills, apparently, which is completely aggravating. Like that's the thing. Like myTouch's, reason for existing is they replaced the search button with like a custom T-Mobile voice search thing, which is the worst thing ever. It's so bad. But the other thing that has been on every myTouch device is just this ridiculously ugly swoop on the earpiece, and it's still there.
Yep.
Yeah. It's still there.
Let's not give T-Mobile too much credit for the myTouch situation. Because, it exists because people call the iPod Touch the iTouch. And T-Mobile was like, we'll trick those idiots into buying crappy phones. And then that just sort of spiraled its way into HTC has a phone they can rebrand as the myTouch 4G. But there was a line of crappy myTouch phones before that. There is now a line of crappy myTouch phones after that. And lo, there will ever be a line of crappy myTouch phones that veer on trademark infringement. And oh, how the displays were terrible. And oh, how the skins were thick.
Saying veer actually would have made a good myTouch, now that I think about it. But no, I mean, like, I think that Huawei is on the right trajectory to make an impact in the U.S. market. I just think they have a long, long way to go. They'll get there probably.
Yeah, and as long as they're always dogged by the implication that they're enabling the Chinese government to spy on our communications, they'll do really well in this market. I mean, which is true. I'm not just making that up, by the way. Like, they're not allowed to sell like routers to the government because there's the implication that the Chinese government has backdoors in all their gear, which is probably true.
All right, we have. We're not going to go over an hour and a half. We have 6 minutes. We have 2 topics left, and we have to talk about both of them. So first one, the Lumia 900 has been cut in half. It's now $50 on contract on AT&T, which is not. Is that the quickest price drop for a flagship device ever? No, I mean it's been out for a while, but it's still like the best phone that you can get running Windows Phone. Like it's. It costs less than the Atrix HD.
I think it's a failure. The end. Go ahead, Chris.
I guess that was actually the impetus for the price cut at this time. It was the Atrix HD because customers would go in and cross shop these two devices and say, this makes no sense. The Atrix HD is way awesomer. Like, the specs are just... That's my guess.
The specs are better, but the Lumia is prettier still.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a very visually striking device, particularly when the store has the cyan one on display, which they don't always. One of the main AT&T stores in downtown Chicago still has their stupid black Lumia on display. And I'm like, guys, you're not going to draw any attention to this device when it looks exactly the same as every other black slab in the store. You need to put the cyan one out.
No, but the screen is full of colored boxes. It's a fail. They blew it. They wasted all this hype on a device that clearly wasn't ready for the U.S. market. And I think Nokia should have known better. I mean, they should have known that Windows Phone 7 was a stopgap for Microsoft until they recalibrated the entire operating system to Windows Phone 8. I don't know why they didn't know that. I don't know why
they knew that. They still thought that they needed to sell phones now. That's what the Lumia 900 is we need to start selling phones in the U.S. market now.
No, I agree. I mean, they definitely knew that. I don't know why they didn't know it, like, in their hearts, like, that this was a stupid idea, because not only were they going to put out a phone with an operating system that wasn't, competitive at every level, not competitive in terms of hardware support, so they're limited in what they could sell, not competitive in terms of app selection, and just not competitive in terms of fit and finish, when the good one is around the corner, or presumably the good one, and they could have put out very competitive devices using an operating system that is very much the foundation of, or at least shares a foundation with Microsoft's future. And it's like, Nokia, what are you thinking? You need to rush to get a device into the U.S. market? Has that ever worked for you? Ever? Like, for the past 10 years, has putting devices in the U.S. market been a really successful strategy for Nokia? Like, why? Why now? Why with this half-baked idea?
Well, the funniest thing about it is that they paired it to the smartphone beta test is over ad campaign, which is like a double whammy. Like, because it really wasn't over.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man. No, it has only just begun. Man.
True.
Yeah. Okay. I have nothing else to say about the 900. I have to bring up a leaked image has appeared, I believe, on Android Police of the LG Optimus Vu with a Verizon logo.
Wow.
And it makes me so happy. This ridiculous 4x3, 5-inch monstrosity is coming to Verizon.
With a capacitive stylus.
I just...
Not an inductive stylus.
Like does Verizon have a Galaxy Note?
No.
Maybe. I think I knew that. T-Mobile's getting it though, right?
T-Mobile's getting it. Yeah, that came out this week. They announced it on Twitter, like their Twitter support announced it, and then they finally put out a press release, but still no price or specific release date on T-Mobile's version of the Galaxy Note, which is insane.
By the way, I don't know why I'm bringing this up. But I'm going to bring it up. I was watching an old program that I had TiVo'd the other day, and you remember when the Galaxy Note first came out in the U.S., they had that commercial with like that sort of like calming music playing in the background. It was just a hand and playing with different apps on the phone. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
I think you dreamed that.
No, this is a very real commercial, and it ran for a long time, and it's very Apple-esque. But what I noticed about it, there are two things very disturbing that I noticed about it. One is that the phone is being held in a hand at an angle, and the phone stays perfectly dead still the entire time while the person is using it, which it doesn't make any sense because it's impossible to keep the phone that still in your hand. Two, it's like a little girl holding it, and her thumb is on the left side of the note, and her fingers are curling around the right side of the note. And so the shape of her hand, she would have to have a mutant hand in order to hold the device like this. So she's holding the phone perfectly still, and her hand is like a foot long. It's very disturbing.
Apple went through a really weird phase where when they were doing FaceTime commercials, they needed to have the phones held still, so they were using rubber hands in a lot of their photos, and especially in the videos, they're using rubber hands. And it was like, once you began to notice that they were rubber hands and they were perfectly still, you could never unsee the rubber FaceTime hand.
I'm using rubber hands as mounts for my phones from now on. Like a desk stand that's a rubber hand.
Oh, it's awful. It was the worst.
This LG View, like, I can't believe that Verizon is taking it. Like, you would need a prosthetic hand just to hold it and like a handle in order to use this thing. It is the most ridiculous phone. It was the most ridiculous phone of Mobile World Congress by far. It was just there just so that they could, I don't know, say that, well, we've got a big old phone too, Samsung, ha ha ha. Like, what could possibly have gotten into what's going on there? Like, I don't know. Do we want the HTC One X? Nah, we'd rather have the Droid Incredible. Do we want the Galaxy S2? Yeah, no, but you know what? This LG View, that's for us. That's what we want.
Yeah. I imagine these planning sessions where carriers decide what phones they're going to carry for the next quarter as being a little bit like Congress, where, like sometimes you'll turn on C-SPAN at a really weird hour and it's broadcasting live from the floor of the House, and like 95% of the members are missing because it's like, it's 11 p.m. or something, but there are 3 people there like talking and voting on God knows what. I imagine Verizon's boardroom a little bit like that, where like everyone's gone home for the day. There are like 2 dudes left, and LG shows up, and they're like, "Hey, you guys want to carry this?" And they're like, "Well, we have a quorum, sure. Let's carry it." That's what's going on in my mind's eye. I don't think that's actually what happened.
No, that's definitely what happens.
That's exactly what happens. No, they just start drinking at like 7 o'clock because they've been sitting looking at carriers walk through the boardroom all day, or I'm sorry, phone manufacturers walking through the boardroom all day, and so at the end of the day they've had a couple drinks, and LG was last, and they're like, sure, let's just do it.
Yeah,
get out of here.
Yeah,
let's do it. Yeah, I played with the View very briefly at MWC when it was introduced, and I just couldn't. It was like
you couldn't hold it.
My impression of it was that they caught wind of the Galaxy Note, and they were just like, let's copy this as quickly as possible without any regards for the nuances that make the Note what it is. So they made it the wrong aspect ratio without really thinking about it, and they just put a stylus on it because they didn't consider the fact that there are things that make the Note stylus very unique, and then they produced this complete piece of garbage. I can't call it a piece of garbage because I haven't used it extensively.
Well, what's funny is that LG has been, I think the last LG phone that David reviewed, he actually liked a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like they've, you know what it is? It's like students in an art museum. Allow me to lead you on this journey. Have you ever been to an art museum? I have. And you go in there and there's a lot of kids on the ground staring at the paintings, desperately trying to copy them. And I imagine that those copies suck. But like half of them will like go on to learn something and start developing their own art. And their early period might be rough. It might still carry a lot of influences. And you might be able to see the lines that they copied from in their own strain. But eventually they enter a mature period where they blossom into artists of their own. And at each step of the way, you weed out the people who can't do it. And LG is sort of in that middle phase, right? where it's like they've stopped just directly copying Apple, which was in its own way just directly copying, or stopped directly copying Samsung, which was directly copying Apple. So they've stopped being this like second-rate iPhone clone. They've gotten through the being now we just are doing whatever Samsung does. And now they're like in their regular phones are starting to like have an identity that might be good. And then there's the View. And it's like, you got to let that go. You have to you just be yourself, LG. Be better than Samsung's bad ideas. But maybe that's not possible. Maybe this is a dream. Maybe I just spent too much time in college drinking in art museums.
And I would like to point out that LG has now made both the 4x3 View and also the 21x9, whatever it was, a couple years ago.
I thought that was Acer.
No, that was LG. I'm not talking about the Android phone.
You're talking about the BL90, the Intel thing.
Oh, right. No.
Or the BL90, as I called it.
It was the chocolate. It was the chocolate 2 or the chocolate 3 or the chocolate 4, whatever. It was that really long. Someone in chat is going to know what I'm talking about. God, what was the model number of that thing? Vlad reviewed it.
The BL90.
BL40.
BL4. Oh, I'm sorry, the BL40.
Yeah, the BL40. Yes, the LG BL40.
Oh my God, that's right. I remember this now. This thing is a wow.
Oh my
God. Longest phone ever. You know, the BL40 the BL40 is actually long enough to hold the View, ironically.
Oh, man.
Can we end this thing?
Let's be done.
I was gonna say on that note, we need to get out of here before we start talking about BlackBerry and it gets depressing. So this has been the Verge Mobile Show. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you really should. We're all at Verge. I'm at Backlon. Chris is at ZPower. Nilay is at Reckless. And we'll be back next week, possibly with Vlad Savov, which will be super exciting. So thanks.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, guys.
Vita.